Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Thursday, January 11th, 2024. We're going to be talking about Jesus' temptation today. Yesterday was the baptism. Jesus' temptation. We saw in his baptism, he didn't need to be baptized, but he chose to be baptized, to truly be with us, to be one of us in that sense. And in continuing in that vein, he then went out into the wilderness. The three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, tell us where he was tempted. Again, Matthew and Luke describe this in much more detail, much more depth than Mark does. Mark has simply two short verses, 12 and 13, again, of Mark 1. This is following immediately on the heels of his baptism. And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. Now, Mark and Luke tell us what shape those temptations took, but that's not really the focus here or the issue for Mark. It's simply to tell us that Jesus, in keeping again with his baptism, that he became one of us, baptized to be one with us, to be one of us, and that continued with his temptation as well. In his Good Friday sermon back in 2005, Dr. Richard Lisher, who is an ELCA pastor and the professor emeritus of preaching at the Duke Divinity School, in that Good Friday sermon in 2005, he asked these questions. Have you ever been tempted? So was Jesus, he said. Thus your temptations have been redeemed in his. Have you ever been hated? He said. So was he. So you have a place in him. Have you ever been lonely, afraid, without a place called home? So was he. Have you ever cried when you're sad? So did he. Do you sweat when you're afraid? So did he. Have you ever, in anguish, asked why? So did he. You have a place in him. The same preacher who wrote these words of having a place with God when we're afraid and sad and doubting God lost his only son on July 17th of the following year. Dr. Lisher's son Adam was 33 years old. He was a budding attorney who had just joined the firm where his mother practiced law, enabling them to realize their long-held ambition to practice law together. But their son Adam died not long after being diagnosed with a brain tumor. And he died 12 days just before his first child, a baby girl, was born. And so the question is, does Dr. Lisher, the preacher who lost his son, know unspeakable pain? Yes. Does he know the kind of anguish that hits him in the pit of the stomach? Yes. Does he know what it's like to be so sad that he can hardly get out of bed and face another day? I'm sure he does. But he also knows a Savior who has experienced that same level of pain, a Savior who cried out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus came to be Emmanuel, to be God with us. And in doing so, he experienced everything that we will experience in this life, beginning with the temptations, but continuing throughout the rest of his ministry. There was not anything, including death, that Jesus did not experience that we experience. But what was the point? He didn't need to be baptized. What was the point of the temptations to see if, he might fail? Well, I've told this story before, but I think it's the best way of describing it. Years ago, in the mid-19th century, as the Union Pacific Railroad was being constructed, an elaborate trestle bridge was built across a large canyon out west. And wanting to test the bridge, the builder loaded a train with enough extra cars and equipment to double the normal payload that would be going over it. The train was then driven to the middle of the bridge, where they left it for an entire day, which prompted one worker to ask, "Are you trying to break this bridge?" "No," the builder replied, "I'm trying to prove that the bridge won't break." Well, in the same way, The temptations that Jesus faced weren't designed to see if he would sin, but to prove that he couldn't. And again, there's more detail in Matthew and Luke. The devil, Satan, takes his best shot, but Jesus is able to resist temptation in a way that we're unable. So he's able to do, as one of us, to be truly human, he's able to do for us that which we could not do for ourselves. And that's the whole point of a God who's come to be with us. Well, we'll stop there. Tomorrow we'll pick up with his preaching and then culminate on Saturday with the calling of the first disciples. Again, Mark shoves a whole bunch of stuff in these short 20 verses that really gets the ball rolling, gets the story moving along. So hope you have a great day today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.